Welcome to the Industry Angel Podcast. We hear from the best business minds across the globe. Entrepreneurs, social influencers, marketing mavens, and sales rock stars. We've got them all. Here comes your weekly dose of inspiration with your host, Ian Farah.
Welcome to episode 69 of the Industry Angel. Halloween is over, and that means Thanksgiving and Christmas are just around the corner, as is our live episode here in South Shields. Remember to get your tickets, industryangel.com/live. I think it's on the 15th of November. You should know that, Ian, shouldn't you? But yes, I'd love to see you there, so grab your tickets because they're very limited. Okay, some shout outs. Mick Guthrie is enjoying the show and keeping up with a little bit of home as he travels around London. Jonathan Morgan is listening whilst he commutes and juggles family life. Well, tell me about it, Jonathan. We're all in the same boat, my friend. Chris Orrick has recently found the show and has been enjoying episodes whilst he goes walking. Good to hear from you, Chris. Simon Bourne enjoyed episode 55, Build a Brand in 30 Days. Very popular one, that one, Simon. And that was his first ever podcast episode. So welcome aboard, Simon. Good to have you with us. Derek Curtis has noticed that our bumper music has changed and he misses the old one. Well, do you? I love the new one, it's fine. Okay, on to today's guest. Today we have the Managing Director of manufacturing company Martel Instruments. Welcome to the Industry Angel, Keith Walker.
Good morning.
Good. Well, you don't sound too happy because you've had some technical gremlins there. Come on, you need to do better than that, Keith.
Good morning.
There you go. Thank you very much. So listen, Keith, before we start, congrats, because you and the team won an Innovation Manufacturing Award last week, yeah?
We did indeed. Business Insider magazine had sponsored the Made in the Northeast Awards, and we were nominated in 2 categories, and we were very pleased to have won the Manufacturing Innovation Award for our latest product, Vida 4.0.
Well, there you go. Great recognition. So, listen, before we jump into Vida, so we will definitely talk about that because that's what we're going to talk about today, innovation. Let's wind it back. So, Martel, 20 years old, is it, Keith?
The company's actually was originally founded in the southeast of England and then was moved to Stanley in the mid-80s. So, the company's actually about 35 years old. Was originally in the manufacture of liquid crystal displays, but moved into thermal printers about 20 years ago.
So, all right, okay, I see. That's where I'm getting the 20 years from. And you're manufacturing on site. This is not kind of outsourced anywhere. You guys are designing and manufacturing in the Northeast here, yeah?
Yes, the essence of our proposition is that Martel Instruments can design and manufacture a thermal printer solution for an equipment manufacturer in smaller volume than anybody else on the planet. All of that is done here in Stanley.
There you go. There's a USP if ever I heard one. We're going to talk about innovation because it's a really interesting story. That's why I'm really keen to get you on today, Keith, because you recognised that there was a potential fear of digitization being a threat to your marketplace, am I right?
Yes. So essentially, to give people a flavour of how they experience thermal printing. So if you go to the supermarket checkout, you get a long printout of all of the items that you've bought. And that is produced by a thermal printer. So that's the basic technology. What Martel specialises in is smaller volume customized applications for people who make things like petrol pumps or medical devices. So if you can imagine that in 5 years' time, it's extremely unlikely you'll still get a long printout when you go to the supermarket checkout. You're much more likely to have had it emailed home or some other digital means. And that's just one example, really, of the world in which we found ourselves. Which was thermal printing is a very robust technology. It's been around a long time, and its robustness is due to the fact that it's very simple, very robust, and is probably the lowest cost per document methodology of producing a simple monochrome document there is. Martel Instruments' dilemma was that particular niche and the threat to that particular technology led us to consider what it was we were going to do in order to make our business survive and grow. So, and we realized that we're small and there's only us. And what are we going to do here to make sure that this small company continues to feed 35 families in Northwest Durham? And so really for us, Ian, innovation was not a fluffy, nice to have, gosh, wouldn't it be good if we won an award kind of thing. It was, goodness me, if I look forward 5-10 years hence, what does the future hold for my business if I don't address the fundamental issue about what our technology looks like and how we're creating value for our customers?
Well, that's a great summary, so thanks for that. Just thinking about that reason or that kind of mindset that come like we need to really innovate here. Where was that driven from? Was that from the senior management team? Was that from investors? How does the company sit? How does it? What's the company breakdown?
Okay, so Martel Instruments is actually owned by a venture capital fund called Maven Capital Partners, who have recently established an office here in the Northeast. Maven have supported the business since they bought it in 2007. And so Maven's interest, and if you like, is exactly the same as the management, is exactly the same as the staff, which is we've got a tidy business here, but its core technology is kind of mature, and therefore, what can we do here to create a prosperous and a more secure future for all of the stakeholders in the business? I do take your point, though. I mean, and I do think that one of the most difficult challenges people face when they talk about innovation is really kind of what does it mean and who's going to do what. And of course, the difficulty that people have is in larger companies, you may well have a world in which someone gets appointed the innovation manager. And of course, the issue when one appoints an innovation manager is you actually unappoint anybody else, and they've all got their day jobs to do. So I do think that because of the real need to create time and space for innovation, unless you have an absolute commitment to that from the most senior management in the company, you're only ever really going to pay it lip service. So by that, Ian, I mean that essentially you monitor people's performance because that's what we do as managers. And for the most part, you live in a world where there's a relatively easily defined task. Innovation doesn't sit in that place. And so the necessity is that you have to actually create the time and the space that you're prepared to run the risk of wasting. Because innovation of itself is not a precise science. You cannot embark upon this particular journey with a very fixed destination in mind, because that's not where the process takes you. So what we set out to do here was to recognize that we couldn't buy in innovation. We could buy in help on our own journey in innovation, but we had to be able to make the most of that help. And so what we did first and foremost was create time and space. So we said that there was a team of people who were going to be involved. There were 7 of them in the initial group, and they could spend their Friday afternoons doing whatever innovation was. We began by getting the assistance of Dan Martin at Octo Design in Newcastle to come and facilitate for us sessions that actually sought to train our colleagues on what innovation processes looked like. So I was in a place which was the people that I have working with me have deep knowledge, but not necessarily wide knowledge, and didn't have a toolkit to begin an innovation process. So essentially where I was at, if people were prepared to try, then I was prepared to make sure that I created the time and space for them to be trained so that they could start to actually exploit and explore the expertise that all their years of experience gave them. And I felt that that was the most appropriate route to go because, yes, I could go and get assistance in and did, but I didn't want to be in a place where, for want of a better expression, Ian, the management were imposing innovation. The management had decided that we were going to be innovative. You can't force people there. What you can do with people is you can open up a window for them, and you can say, you have skills, you have talent, and you have experience. What I'm trying to do is create a world in which you can enjoy your job more by being more involved, and also by feeling that you're actually exerting some influence on what the future of the company looks like.
So we're going to have some listeners here, Keith, and they're going to be loving that. But and I'm sure my as well, my scariness is that it's a great investment having 7 or 8 people out on a Friday afternoon. Who backfills that work? What did you do from a resource point of view? Did it just work, or?
I say, well. In fairness, what happened was that it kind of backfilled. So we didn't find ourselves kind of quoting longer lead times on any other projects, but actually. We're talking here about people for whom, if you like, the nature of their tasks isn't easily defined. So it's kind of difficult. So that theoretically one can see that there was half a day there that, if you like, needed to be found somewhere. And I suppose and I'm trying not to be oversimplistic by suggesting to you that because of the kind of degree of involvement people were having, and because they therefore felt that they were trusted and involved in the development of the company, that kind of lo and behold, stuff just got done.
That's where I was kind of getting to. And, it is simplistic because it sounds like it just did. It sounds like the company just managed to have that investment. So was it a culture thing then from you, Keith? So, you're talking about the management team, you're talking about not paying lip service to the whole thing. Did you have to really get everyone together from a cultural point of view and say, look, this is the journey we need to go on?
Well, so you certainly need to get people together a lot. And I suppose, you also have to acknowledge people's natural inclination to skepticism. And I suppose because I try to brief everybody in the company on what the company's position is and what the future holds, and I'd been doing that before I kind of embarked upon the innovation exercise, then I suppose people were used to being involved and used to being informed, and therefore for me, I do think that my job as managing director is as much about facilitation as it is about taking authority. And probably the most awkward part of the journey is actually having your colleagues accept and acknowledge almost that your management kind of style, lo and behold, is now a trifle inconsistent. In other words, what you have to do is you spend 4.5 days of the week, obviously in a situation where you're managing projects and you're managing people's accountability, and you're suspending those normal processes for that time. But you have to suspend those normal processes, and you have to, when you're in the role that I've been in, you also have to recognize that if you once go and interrupt what's going on because you've decided something's more urgent and important, well, you might as well forget the whole process then. And it's very much one of kind of creating the time and space and demonstrating almost through your forbearance sometimes, through not doing something you might do the rest of the week, that you regard that time and space as sacrosanct. And in doing so, you actually kind of create, you're then creating an environment where you hope that some of your colleagues will respond to that stimulus and that they will develop and feel they're enjoying themselves. And it is, I think, coming back to your point of a few moments ago, Ian, about kind of commitment, it is about the guy who is the boss being prepared to institutionalize the risk of wasting time in a way that you wouldn't tolerate for the rest of the working week.
Yeah, I love that. And just as you said that, I kind of underlined it a few times because I'm always coming back to that statement you made that you've got to be prepared to waste time. It's, I guess, from the world we live in now, of hustle and, working long hours and emails on a weekend and picking things up. There's probably a few people shuddering now in their earbuds thinking, I can't waste any time. But as you say, it's got to be sacrosanct and you've got to make that commitment.
Well, yes.
If you want to
Sorry,
innovate.
I mean, and I suppose, Ian, that then refers us back to the start of the process, as it were, which is you don't have an alternative. If you keep working hard at doing what you do today, somehow the world will overtake you. And therefore, success is not merely about diligence. It's about context and intelligence as well. So you just have to reconcile yourself to the fact, and that's, of course, what management's all about, is this issue of the allocation of scarce resources. And therefore, I suppose my sense is you can tell yourself that you're too busy to innovate. Well, but I think you're asking yourself the wrong question. Are you too busy to survive? Well, if you're too busy to survive, you're in bloody trouble. Pardon my language.
That's fine. So listen, I want to dig deep into these Fridays. So you mentioned that Dan came in. What did those Fridays look like? And actually, what did the time and space look like? So you've said that you created that time. We got that. Did you create a dedicated space?
Indeed.
And what did those Fridays look like?
So we had obviously we have a building up here in Stanley, and so the first thing we did was we got Dan to come in and facilitate some sessions for us in kind of what a new product development, what an innovation process looks like, and so we had lots of training on just kind of how to identify opportunities, how to identify the obstacles, almost kind of, and very much really a two-pronged approach of kind of encouraging people to lift their heads out of the day-to-day, giving them the confidence that, lo and behold, it isn't something that other people do. Innovation is something that everybody's capable of. And then a kind of toolkit for how you go about assessing opportunities and working through products. Physically, in order to kind of, if you like, make the point about Friday afternoon, then lo and behold, we have what we now call an innovation room. And that innovation room, again, is a kind of sacrosanct space. That's where people go on Friday afternoon. And should I be allowed into that room on a Friday afternoon, I'm not allowed in there as managing director. I'm allowed in there as Keith, who's not going to be the boss in that kind of situation. He's going to be one of us wrestling with some problems and opportunities.
I love that, because you leave everything at the door. And I often say this when I'm coaching and training as well. There's no stupid questions. Just get it out there, because quite often I've seen in environments where if they are concerned that the boss is there, they won't say things. They'll try and keep it to themselves in fear of looking daft. So was that something you guys said? Look, just get it out?
Well, I suppose I have the huge advantage of having daft since I walked in the door. So, and indeed, in those kind of circumstances, what I often try and do is actually make sure that I'm the one that asks the daft question, because then all of a sudden it's okay.
Yes, sure. So those exercises that you did to try and encourage innovation, what did they look like? Was it like lots of brainstorming, post-it notes on walls?
Sorry,
what does it look like?
Yes, lots of post-it notes, lots of brainstorming, lots of bits of plastic, lots of bits of printed circuit boards, lots of devices being bought and pulled apart. Indeed, lots of some of our existing customers' devices, to which we, for the accompaniment of which we supply printers, we'd get hold of them and take them apart. Just really kind of, as it were, recognizing that if our customers trust us to assist them in the manufacture of a branded printer, then they may trust us to supply them with other items, and really kind of almost then getting to a situation of, rather than waiting for our customer to come along and say to us, we want to do this with our device, or can you do this with your printer, really trying to take a more proactive approach. and kind of going along and saying to our customers, hey, this is what we currently supply you. This is why it works with your current device. Why on earth don't we look at doing X, Y, or Z for you? So that's essentially almost kind of enabling us to have a more proactive and innovation-orientated approach to dealing with our customers. I'm afraid one of my many cliches is that I'll sit with my customer and I'll say, I'm not here to sell your box. The language of our
Right.
transactions may end up being in a box, but that's not what I do. And really kind of trying to make that good so that you actually become a more of a collaborative business development partner rather than some tiny company in the northeast of England who's trying to sell some boxes somewhere.
You've spoke a lot about the customers there. When I deal with my clients, what we like to look at is the competition, which can be quite an uneasy exercise when we try and dig into what the competition do well and what they don't do well and try to differentiate. Was that something on the board as well?
Well, we're in a rather interesting position in that the thermal printer, right, the thermal print mechanism, which is the kind of core piece of technology in our printer business, we don't manufacture that. We actually buy that in. And we buy it in from people with whom we actually compete in the wider market. And so that's really been a kind of journey that we've been on of actually determining what was our niche in the world, what could we do to expand upon it, and what could we do to if you like, withstand the risk of competition from our suppliers. And the business model there is really kind of relatively straightforward, so that our competitor/suppliers tend to run their business on the basis of bigger volumes, whereas what we've done here is by maintaining a capability to build PCBAs in-house, we've actually enabled ourselves to have a kind of infrastructure that supports our proposition. So although my printer might have a mechanism in it made by person X is unable to compete with me on the basis of the final product, its degree of customization, the volume in which I'm prepared to supply it, and the lead time in which I can offer it. So we've long been used to recognizing who our competitors were and understanding what we needed to do to differentiate ourselves. And then essentially what the innovation process was about doing was kind of almost making the offering available in that kind of context more technically sophisticated than it's been.
Yeah, brilliant. So let's close this circle. So at the top of the conversation, we discussed that there's a potential risk and a threat to the business. You put the time and the space together to innovate. How long did it take, and what happened at the end? So you've got this product now, which was the innovation product that came out of this exercise. How long did it take to get there, and what is it?
Right. So essentially, the innovation process we began probably about 18 months ago now, and we spent a lot of time not actually looking at producing anything, but actually getting ourselves used to the processes that might be required when you've actually got some ideas. We then...
Can you hear everybody being really nervous here and go, 80 months and nothing happened? I'm really scared about this time.
Oh, sorry.
And this...
Yeah, sorry. If I may, Your Honour, I'll refer the cut to my earlier remark, which is if you're not thinking about what your survival is, if you're so busy being busy about today, well, don't be surprised the day catches up on you at some point. Simple as. But that's also the point, if you like, which is because I was so concerned about what 5 years out looked like for my core technology, I didn't have a choice. That's the point. Right now, what we then developed is a product. We call it Vida 4.0, and effectively, it is a very sophisticated mini computer. And what that mini computer can do is it can handle data, store data, coordinate data, communicate data via various means. And so effectively, If the best example I could give you would be, you may be the manufacturer of perhaps your dentist uses a sterilizer. All the instruments that he uses in dental procedures need to be sterilized. And the government has a body called the Care Quality Commission, whose job it is to come along and make sure that our dentists comply with those requirements. Our dentists, therefore, have sterilizers, and they then print out the outcomes so that ultimately they can show that the instruments have been through the requisite process. Most of those sterilizers are kind of standalone, right? The offering we're making to our customers, who is the manufacturer of the sterilizer, is that simply by using Vida in an existing sterilizer, you could actually make that sterilizer Internet of Things enabled. So therefore, you could actually monitor, calibrate, possibly even software repair the sterilizer without the need for anybody to visit. So effectively, what we're looking at doing there is recognizing that kind of Industry 4.0 is about a connected world. And our customers, their expertise is in the field, such as benchtop sterilizer I just mentioned. Very few people of our kind of size, very few people in most companies, actually, expertise tends to be in the thing they know. And they didn't know printers, so they bought printers from Martel. And maybe they don't know Internet of Things and they're not sure how to go about accessing that. And here's Martel with an offering which is in the context of Martel's design and build smaller volume than anybody else on the planet to enable the OEM to extend the life of his product, or indeed to innovate his own product range in smaller volumes at lower risk and lower cost than might otherwise be the case.
So you're talking about innovating other people's products there. So basically, you could plug this in to an existing piece of kit that doesn't have that functionality, and then suddenly it now has it. So you sound like you're becoming a bit of a tech company. You're talking about big data. You're talking about Internet of Things.
Sorry, and of course that is it's strange. So you're chatting about we're chatting about innovation, and of course the issue with it is it's such a big topic, and it can be kind of intimidating for people. So I suppose, and perhaps there I'm using grander language than I really mean. So for us, what you have to do is almost at the start of the innovation process is kind of re-examine what it is you do, and why you do it, and why people buy from you. And what tends to happen, I think, Ian, is that we often, because of the expertise we generate in our own field, we see ourselves as printer manufacturers, or we make this, we make the best widgets in the world, that kind of thing. And really, I think the challenge, for companies in this day and age is that my expertise is simply the means to an end. And the end is customers. The end is customers. If you look at every field of business, power in the supply chain is getting to the customer. And so therefore, I feel what you have to do is to recognize that particular phenomenon. And then essentially, although it sounds like we've made a big journey and a big leap, all that Vida is a bit more sophisticated printed circuit board than we used to make. The advantage to our customer is immense. It's still leveraging our core established competencies and skills. So what we've tried to do is to innovate without moving too far from what we're good at and what we're known for. If I was going to get giddy with you, what I haven't done is open a craft bakery. Well, no, yeah. All the craft bakers listening, please rest assured. So it is. So although the language sounds like it's a big departure, the fact is that given one's size, given scale, given risk, that you're actually looking simply to be not very far from where you are, but recognise that in making that relatively short journey, you've still got the essential reasons why your business exists. You're simply developing them. And of course, our first port of call with Vida was with our existing printer customers. Well, what we're finding now, and why we were particularly thrilled with the award that we won a few weeks ago, is that we've been in a place essentially where we've no profile here in the Northeast. And we've not needed a profile in the Northeast because there are very few printer customers in the Northeast. Well, what Vida does is enables manufacturers to innovate at lower risk cost and in lower volumes, and therefore we've a lot more prospective customers here in the Northeast than we had previously. So I'm particularly grateful to you for this opportunity, because we're about building our profile here in the Northeast. And do you know what? I don't know where that's going to end up. But one thing I do know is I've never had a queue of customers down Stainlaw Way yet. So I must be doing something different to try and address that problem.
Well, I mean, it's a great message, and I'm really pleased you've came out today, because I think that whole message about creating the time and the space, being able to waste time, and look what's come out the back end. So thinking about listeners now, who would you recommend could do this? So, can anybody do this? And if so, how would they start?
Do the process of innovation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yes. How do you start? For want of a better expression, if your style and behaviors have been, dare I say, dictatorial, then you're going to find it very difficult to start to be collaborative. If your management has been more collaborative, then you are several paces along that particular route, because people are used to being trusted to make decisions. And so for me, kind of the innovation was almost the secondary part to what the fundamental management values and beliefs are. And what the innovation dealt with was really giving people who were experienced but maybe lacking confidence in being able to develop in their jobs, or being able to help the company develop its product range, if you like, giving them the skills and the confidence to apply the experience, knowledge, nous and wisdom that they had. And what the management have to do in that kind of circumstances is, as I say, create the time and space that might be wasted, because the journey and and I feel like the improvement in contribution you can get from lots of your colleagues is just worth having.
If I can just jump in, you mentioned one word with collaboration, and I think that's pretty key to what you've said there. You've brought in external agencies, and you've kind of realised that to succeed you need to do that. And was that something that you kind of strategically said, I need help here, and I need to research and see who can bring in?
Yes. So the thing, the place that we were in was that if you like, we needed help with both process, and we probably also needed help with content. What I was particularly keen to avoid, forgive me if I'm repeating what I may have said earlier, is you can't walk into your business on Monday morning and say, right, you lot, I've decided to be innovative. Right, everybody, start innovating. Get on with it. I'll be around to check up how you're getting on in an hour. You can't do that because it doesn't mean anything. Right? What you've got to do is to kind of say to people, here's where our business is. Here are the challenges that face it. You're what I've got. Right? What do you want to do? Do you want to sit here and have a world in which that your business just kind of withers on the vine, or do you want to have an opportunity where you can actually exert some control over your future and possibly expand on the skills that you've got, and possibly enjoy yourself a bit as well along the way? So you do have to kind of so it is that profound. Because otherwise you simply cannot, you can't go and hire someone to go and be innovative for you. You can go and hire someone who helps give you a perspective, who may bring expertise that you don't have in your company to bear. But you cannot subcontract the ownership of the process. Otherwise you're imposing its outcomes on your staff. And you'd do better if you're able to maintain the clarity of ownership of the process with your colleagues, and that therefore everybody you bring in is a subcontractor who's been hired to facilitate or inform in some particular fashion. They haven't been hired to own.
I'm thinking about call to actions here. I'm thinking about people listening to this. I want them to go away and think about this innovation, and could they dedicate a half day, like a Friday afternoon in their business, to sit and think? So how, in terms of, I asked you, how could they start? Is it literally just getting together, Keith, on a half day, having that sacrosanct time in your diary and sit and strategize?
Yes, I think that. I think that's a start. But I do think that sort of a useful things to do that probably I wish I'd done and hadn't. Right, was because I was torn. I was torn between this notion of having a sense of, I'm the managing director, I ought to know where this is going, right? And that sense of, gosh, I wonder where this might take us. And that's the biggest kind of dilemma, because, you know, when you're doing the jobs that me and people with the same title as I've got, your accountability and responsibility, you carry it seriously, and you've almost got to kind of just restrain yourself, but from kind of thinking, no, I've got to know what this outcome is. Because if I don't know what the outcome is, how do I get there? And that's a very traditional, I'd almost kind of say 70s, 80s kind of, you know, management methodology. Whereas I think that lo and behold, if you look at kind of successful innovation that surrounds us, so much of it has kind of been accidental. I don't think some gadget wandered along to Apple and said, "Hey, I could really do with having all my music in my pocket. What can you do for me?"
Excellent, Keith. So is there anything else you want to leave us with? I've really enjoyed that, and I'm sure it's give people it's spurred them on to start to innovate. Is there anything else you could leave us with?
Good grief, no, that would be arrogant beyond words. No, I thank you. I thank you very much for the opportunity, and if anybody is still listening, I thank them for their patience.
So could anybody get in touch with you if they wanted to pick your brains on this?
It wouldn't take long, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm going to put a link in the show notes for, you could maybe drop Keith an email. Is that all right, Keith?
That would be fine.
If there was a company out there who are looking to try and innovate and had some ideas, could they just shoot you a line and just ask some advice?
Yes, if anybody wants to come along and have a look at our innovation room, it's not grand, you know, but it just kind of might give you a flavour. And indeed, I would welcome anybody who wants to come along and pick what little brains we have.
Well, there you go. So there's the call to action. Prepare to waste time and innovate. So Keith, thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Good morning.
Thanks to Keith Walker there. Martel and the team understood that time doesn't stand still, and they set off on their journey of innovation. Have you done the same? Have you tried to future-proof your company, diversified into other industries, brought in another revenue stream? If so, I'd love to hear from you. Maybe you're about to embark on such a journey. If so, remember Keith's words, prepare to institutionalize the risk of wasting time. Keith will be attending MD&M Minneapolis on the 8th and 9th of November and Eastern Analytic on the 13th and 15th at New Jersey. So if you happen to be there, tell them hi from me. So until next time, I'm Ian Farrer. This is the Industry Angel. Thanks for listening.